After choosing, measuring, and mixing cake ingredients, the last thing you want is your cake to stick to the pan. When you take a few moments to prep your pan, your baked cake will slide out in one piece with smooth, clean edges. Here are a couple of tips for cake success. First, read your recipe and make sure the pan actually needs to be greased. Some cakes don't need it. Second, always prep your pan before you mix your batter so the batter doesn't sit and deflate while you're prepping the pan. For this simple prep, you need only a pastry brush, oil, shortening or softened butter, and flour. Step 1. Grease up. Using a pastry brush, coat the bottom and sides of the pan evenly with oil, shortening, or softened butter. Why use a brush? Because it helps you reach into all the corners. Step 2. Dust with flour. Scoop 2 or more tablespoons of flour into the oiled pan. Don't use flour that you've measured for your recipe. This is extra. Tip and shake the pan so flour coats the greased sides and bottom evenly. Keep turning and shaking the pan so that flour covers every inch. Then turn the cake pan over and tap out the excess flour. If you're baking a chocolate cake that won't be frosted on the sides, like German chocolate cake, use sifted cocoa powder instead of flour to prep the pan. That way, you won't have a white flour coating on your dark cake. For extra non-stick insurance, or if your recipe calls for it, line the bottom of your pan with parchment paper instead of using grease and flour. Trace the bottom of the pan, round, square, or rectangular, on a sheet of parchment paper. Use a food-safe marker, then cut it out. To keep the parchment paper in place in the bottom of the pan, brush on a bit of shortening or butter and place the parchment paper on top. The grease works like glue to hold the paper in place. After you've baked your cake, let it cool on a rack for about 10 minutes before you remove it from the pan. To get the cake out of the pan, hold the pan so the top of the cake is facing you and tap the sides against the countertop to loosen the cake. Invert the cake onto a cooling rack. That's it! When you prep your cake pan, getting your cake out in one gorgeous piece is a piece of cake.